So here's my project file. We're working inside of Ableton. For this project, the song's tempo is 124 beats per minute, and the key signature is B minor. The main elements that make up this song are pretty much the drums, the main funk bass guitar, there's some synth basses, there's some synthesizers such as like pads, and then there's a main piano that plays throughout the song. The chords are B minor, D major, E minor, and then G major. And there's two little staccato notes in the progression. It's D major again, and then F sharp minor. Here's the main funk bass, and for that I'm using Kontakt 5, and I'm using the Scarby J bass, and I'm using the preset neck. Here's what it sounds like. And I know this note's right here is supposed to be more of a pitch bend. And then towards the later part of the verse, it comes in a thicker bass. It sounds more synthesized. And for that, I actually have 3 layers. The first layer, I'm using the Jupiter 8 V3 from Arturia. For the second layer, I'm using the Juno 106 bass preset from Ableton. And then the third, I'm using Spire, and the preset is one of the main Spire presets called Simply Progressive 1. And together, this is what they sound like. Each individual sound sounds like this. And obviously, individually, they all sound pretty weird, but I think when you combine them together, they sound pretty good. And then I actually just have this sample that I found for the little slide that he does during the transitions. And I believe I just pitched it up 4 semitones to the right key that it plays. And during the pre-chorus, there's a nice analog bass that's playing underneath everything just to give it more body. And it's playing the root of all the chords. And for that, I used, again, the Jupiter 8 V3 from Arturia, and this is what it sounds like. Also, in the pre-chorus, there's a couple of synths. For this one, I know I definitely didn't get it right. It sounds to me like he might have used some part of Dua Lipa's vocal to actually make this synth choir kind of pad, but I just used the CMIV from Arturia and Spire. And then also I used a sound from Serum, this PL Spacer preset, and together this is what it sounds like. And as you can hear, it's also being filtered in, and then also like reverb and delays to just make it bigger as it builds up. And then there's also a pad layer, which is, again, just the chords. And for that, I'm using, again, Jupiter 8. And this is what it sounds like. Here we'll take a look at the drums. There's quite a bit of drums in here. Not like crazy, but everything is just adding to the overall groove of the song. To save time looking for the perfect kick and snare, I actually just resampled it from the song, so that's why the kick and snare sound exactly the same. And then there's this offbeat hi-hat that plays throughout. There's a ride cymbal that plays on every other downbeat, basically. There's quite a few different crashes that play throughout, as you can see right here. I'm using a drum rack, and there's 2 different crashes, and then also there's the main big crash, and for that I actually just stacked up 3 different crashes, and together it sounded pretty close to his, and then there's a bit of reverb on it to give it more of a tail. And then when the synth basses come in, there's a big clap that comes in as well. And then when the synth basses come in, later on in the verse, a clap comes in as well. And he also has some nice drum fills and pretty much sound like this all together. And for that, I just cut up some drum fill samples that I found and kind of just put them all together. And this is what the verse drums sound like. And then lastly, in the pre-chorus, there's a big clap that comes in, and I layered 2 claps to get a bigger sound. And then in the second half of the pre-chorus is a shaker that comes in, and this is just a loop sample that I found. And then for the chorus, the drums are pretty much the same. The only main noticeable element that comes in is the cowbell. And for that, I pretty much used the same cowbell, but I offset them so you kind of get that effect that he did. And then there's just a bit of reverb on them to give it that space. For the chorus, the funk bass is pretty much the same as the verse, but he adds that little slap noise, and for that I used the same Scarby J bass from Kontakt, except I think I used a different preset. Yeah, I used the bridge preset, and it kind of just plays like on these random offbeats throughout the bass. Also, what I like in the chorus is he has like this beatbox that's made up from a bunch of breaths. And I just found a few samples that I thought sounded pretty close. And this is the pattern that they play. It adds a lot of energy to the chorus. If you were to play it without them, you notice a bit of a difference. And then the rest of the effects are pretty much just sweeps and stuff. I actually didn't come close to this one sound that he has in there during the verse. I tried to remake it, and I just can't get close. This is the one I ended up making. It's kind of like a little pitch sine wave noise. But yeah, I mean, it still sounds cool, but it doesn't really sound like the one in his song. Oh, and then lastly, during the pre-chorus, there's actually a string that plays in the last half of it. And it sounds kind of like this. And I actually had this from another project that I was working on, and it just so happened to work. Pretty much all I did was at the very beginning, I added this pitch bend that you hear in his song, and then I pitched it up to the right key. You don't see that right here because I think I had already done it and then froze the sample and bounced it, so it's already set to the right key. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything that makes up the song. So here's what the final outcome sounds like. I'm going to be turning on and off the acapella because of copyright. Hopefully it doesn't come from just the instrumental.
If you don't wanna see me, crazy, thinking about the way I was. Did the heartbreak change me? If you wanna believe,